So one day, I approached Indudumna Swami, a prominent ISKCON guru, and I asked him privately and if he could please kindly discuss this topic with me. He was a senior sannyasi and a guru. We had known one another for several years. He was engaged in actual preaching work, and so I respected him as a preaching sannyasi. Still, he refused to honor my request. This was sometime in 1999, as I recall, when he told me the main reason why. He informed me that the GBC had passed a resolution forbidding GBC members or sannyasis or any member of ISKCON from discussing the Ritvik Ras ideas with the Ritvik Ras supporters, as they claimed that this was such a poisonous issue that even GBC members or sannyasis can become poisoned just by hearing the arguments from the other side. Well, first of all, I was not a Ritvik Ras supporter. And second, my concerns were not about the Ritvik Ras path, as I still had major reservations about its legitimacy. I just wanted a leading ISKCON devotee to discuss the merits of my arguments regarding why the GBC, my arguments that the GBC must restore the functions and duties that Srila Prabhupada had assigned them. And now I wanted to discuss some of the cracks I was finding in the GBC arguments supporting their system. I wasn't out to convince anyone to take up the Ritvik Ras path. I mean, I still hadn't even begun to research any of that yet. To me, this wasn't about the Ritvik Ras issue, and not at that time yet anyway. I just wanted to discuss my concerns and my findings with someone of authority. For the past 2 years, I had been begging the GBC over and over to do this with me, and yet they'd cut off all communication and refused to reply to any more of my requests. Not one of them, not one member had the courtesy to inform me why they refused to communicate with me. It was 2 years later that finally a leading sannyasi informs me why the GBC had been stubbing me all this time. And that was really ironic, because during that whole time, I was on their side on the Ritvik issue. That was their mistake and their wrong conclusion. But they had taken that my advice to them to restore the duties of the GBC back to the GBC was solely aimed at tricking them to accept the Ritvik Ras path. And maybe it was a trick, but not by me. Maybe it was Lord Krishna's trick. Anyway, that was their misunderstanding and mistake. Because they wrongly accused me of being a Ritvik, they refused to have any further discussion with me regarding my research work. And it was their refusal to communicate with me that drove me to keep going further and further into this issue, as I didn't want it to leave it standing that they had thought me of being as a Ritvik supporter, which I wasn't when I got started on this. But it was the additional research that I began to see all these cracks in their arguments and became more curious as to what this issue really was all about. Let me add something here regarding Indudumna's refusal to discuss this issue with me. He actually gave 2 reasons, not just one, for not speaking me. He didn't speak me. I don't know why he didn't speak me. Let me add something here regarding Indudumna's refusal to discuss this issue with me. He actually gave 2 reasons, not just one, for not speaking with me about this issue. The first one I already gave was that the GBC was strongly advising all members, including sannyasis, from discussing what they claimed was a poisonous philosophy, and they didn't want the members discussing this with the supporters of the Ritvik Ras side. But he also gave me another reason why he refused, and that reason had troubled me for some time afterwards. He told me that he was the wrong person to speak with about this because he admitted that he had never studied this issue, especially the arguments given by either side on this Ritvik Ras issue. That is, he told me he really didn't know what the GBC's arguments were or those on the Ritvik Ras side either. The reason he gave for this was that Srila Prabhupada had set up the GBC to be our leaders. He had designated them as our ultimate authorities. He told me his focus for so many years was just on preaching, taking Krishna consciousness to the conditioned souls. He did that before he was asked to become a guru. That has always been his focus. He told me he had always taken the position of accepting the authority of the GBC, and that since they had researched this, or commissioned others to do the research, but since they had researched it, he simply accepts their conclusions. Since the GBC have declared that the system they are following is the system that Srila Prabhupada wanted, and the GBC have declared the Ritvik Ras path as bogus and poisonous, he accepts their conclusions because he accepts the leadership of the GBC. As I said, this bothered me for some time. And the part that bothered me was that he had taken up the role of accepting disciples. If others were doing that, maybe you can excuse yourself from researching this issue directly yourself. But for him to take up the role of guru and not have done his own research on this issue and become familiar with the arguments, it just struck me as wrong. But years later, actually after I began praying to Srila Prabhupada and begging him to guide me so that this will be his presentation, I began to realize that Indradumna's position was respectable. As a good disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he always accepted the authority of the GBC that was given to them by Srila Prabhupada. And for years, as he said, he wasn't in the position to do the study and research on this issue. That he had always left up to the GBC to do. His focus was on his preaching service, and that is commendable and respectable. It was because of his preaching attitude that I originally sought out his association. Because the GBC reached the conclusions they have, he either wasn't in a position or didn't have the time to do the research himself. So he has always just accepted the GBC's conclusions. And that is the right position to take. When we don't know what is really right or wrong for ourselves, and we don't know for certain that our authorities are actually wrong, and then, also we don't have access or facility to do our own due diligence at times, for whatever reason, then we should accept the conclusions and guidance given by our authorities. In the case of Bali Maharaj, however, he knew that service to and respecting Vishnu was the right thing to do. So when his guru Sukracharya advised him to reject Vaman's request, because Vaman was actually Vishnu himself in disguise and had come to trick Bali and take his kingdom away from him, Bali knew that his guru was giving him all bad advice. He should never disrespect and refuse the request of either a Brahmin or especially that of Vishnu. It was because Bali Maharaj knew without any doubt at all that his guru had given him bad advice. He had no choice but to reject his own guru. So devotees like Indradumna, who didn't have the awareness or knowledge that the GBC was wrong in this issue, or that they even most likely were, since it was not easy for him to do his own research, he simply took the safest path, and that was to accept the guidance given to him by his authority. But on this issue, because so many disciples of Srila Prabhupada consider the GBC to be wrong, there is enough cause and concern for us to do our own due diligence. And for me, this became more concerning as I had direct knowledge that a number of these men had committed Guru Aparad in Prabhupada's last month with us. So I had cause for doubting their conclusions on this topic. And because I'm making this information available and sharing it with the followers of Srila Prabhupada, it's time for all the members to do our own due diligence, because now the needed information is available, and there's enough information to know that these men were fully capable of making very bad and wrong decisions during the same period of time when they were trying to figure out what exactly Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do regarding this Ritvik Guru issue. Since they made huge blunders and other decisions, these same men at that same time, this warrants us to do a thorough review of their decisions on this topic. Also, as I will reveal in the chronological timeline section, I will provide solid evidence that the GBC men present in the May 28th meeting had totally misunderstood what Srila Prabhupada was saying. And they missed the most important instructions he did give, which now that we know, and I will be revealing, we can see when, how, and why they had misunderstood and got everything wrong about. With this added information, it is now imperative that the GBC members re-study this issue, as well as all the sincere followers of Srila Prabhupada.